Scene one, Apple, take one.
I'm here today with Dani van Herk, who I have known for many years. We met at film school in Australia in 2010, and we've been working on projects internationally ever since then. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to the interview. Thank you so much, and just ask you to introduce yourself, talk about kind of like where you are right now, what you're doing, and then jump back a little more into like how you got started in the film industry and all that.
Right now I'm in Holland. I have my own company called De Cresso, and I do post-production for films, mainly audio, but I also video edit. So that's where I am right now.
One of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and I just mentioned, is we met in Australia. So talk to me about where you grew up and how you got interested in film, and then later we'll shift into how did you end up in Australia.
Well, I grew up in Holland. I was 17 when I finished high school, and I watched a lot of TV series and a lot of films, and I owned a Buffy the Vampire Slayer on DVD, and the DVD had behind the scenes footage. And when I saw that, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be involved some way in making films or making TV series. So I started watching all kinds of behind the scenes footage from all the DVDs that I had, or on the internet. But I was 17 when I finished high school, and I was too young to go to film school because you have to be 18. So I decided to study media communication at Webster University in Holland, both because my dad wouldn't allow me to have a gap year, but also because I wanted to be better at English, because my high school was in Dutch, and I wanted to leave the country and study somewhere else and live somewhere else for a while. So I wanted to improve my English. And so my dad and I compromised, and we said, okay, well, while you improve your English, you can also study and get a degree. So I studied at Webster University for my media communications degree.
Before you went to university for media, you're already planning going to film school. So talk about how once you finished that, you went back to the idea of film school, and then how that idea ended up being you moving to Australia and going to film school there.
Actually, the idea that wanting to go to film school had actually never left. So I did everything that I could. All the courses were specifically tailored. Like I tried to do everything that was either video related or photography related or like editing related. So everywhere in any course that I could do some sort of video editing or video project, I would do it. But obviously, like I also had to do the other stuff. So when I finished Webster, I really wanted to go to I either wanted to go to America or Australia. So I started applying to all kinds of film schools. One of the places that accepted me was the International Film School of Sydney. And just before that, my family and I went on vacation there in Australia, and I loved it. I loved the country. I loved the culture there. So I was like, I'm going to Sydney. And that's how I ended up going to film school in Sydney.
Talk a little bit about the program that you went through and what you learned and how you ended up kind of deciding on what aspect of filmmaking you wanted to pursue.
I got into what was it called? The directing, screenwriting, and producing course, because I was also at that time, it was also a cinematography course, but I knew I wasn't that interested in camera work. When I started film school, I really wanted to direct. That was like the thing that I wanted to do. And through film school, I kind of realized I was more interested in post-production. I did the directing, screenwriting, and producing course at film school, which was really like, it was just an amazing experience and an amazing course to do.
When you were going through school, how did you move from I'm going into this program to direct, and then going out of the program with I want to go into post? So what happened during the studies that enabled that kind of change of focus to come up for you?
I think we came out of film school with like 20 short films. I mean, just from yourself. And for all the short films, you had to also help each other. So you did pretty much every single thing, every single crew member you had to learn how to do every single thing. So I got to direct my own films, which was it's such a great experience to be able to do everything from produce, direct, write, do camera work, do sound work, do everything. But while I was directing, I just found that it wasn't really my thing. I never really knew well how to communicate with the actors and get the best performances out of them. So, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. Like I said, we had to do everything. So we also had to do your own post-production and your own video editing and sound. I was more interested in getting the footage back from our day shooting and looking at it and seeing what I could do with it. So that's sort of how I slowly got into post-production, by doing every single other thing on set as well.
Talk to me about what freelance you were doing and what it was like to move from kind of the safety of like, oh, I'm in school working on projects, to, just like everyone, when you start working in the film industry, it's not like a regular job. It's not like, oh, I'm working on this project and I'm done. It's this constant hunt for new work and establishing connections and relationships with people and getting yourself out there. So how was that transition, and what specifically did you do?
One of the real benefits about film school is that you actually build up your network from people that you know in film school, that you work with in film school, and they also all graduate and they also all want to do their own projects and their own things. So throughout the course, I also got very good at sound recording, and that was something that no one wanted to do. No one was really interested in that, but I found it was really nice and really interesting to do. So people from film school knew that I did sound recording and I did it well, and I had my own gear. I bought my own stuff. So I got asked a lot to do projects with people that I knew from film school, and then people that, like, actors that I met that had their own projects, and so the whole network sort of grew, and I knew a lot of people in Sydney that needed sound recorders, and not everyone, but like a lot of people came to me and just said, can you help me out? Can you do this? That's how I got into sort of freelance sound recording. And then I also got into freelance editing, which was, I guess, more difficult to do, but I think I got that also a lot through the school's network that you build there. And yeah, also by the old job hunting online, and the finding stuff on the internet.
I'm curious what your experience is being a part of projects that kind of represent, you and your kind of community, as well as, what it was like to work on kind of bigger projects instead of just growing out of, like you mentioned, most of the initial connections you had were from film school. So those are kind of like student projects or people who just finished school, and then now you're working more like professional things.
It's funny because Starting From Now actually happened only after the Newtown Girls, and Starting From Now was a lot of the crew and cast that I met on the Newtown Girls. But the Newtown Girls, I got that gig basically, I was living with an actress at that time, and she got a casting call for it, and then she said, oh, they're also looking for crew. So I applied for it, got an interview, and then they were very excited to work with me. And it was really nice because, yeah, like you said, it was a lesbian web series, and it's nice to work with people like you, and that you were represented on screen, because I think everyone wants that. Everyone wants to see themselves on screen, whether it's in a web series or a film or a TV series. It's nice to work with like-minded people. Yeah, that's how I got to work on the Newtown Girls, and it was a web series, and I think we did 3 seasons from memory. I don't really remember. About 8 to 10 episodes in a season. It's great to work on a bigger project that continues on, because you get to really know each other, really like work well with each other, and you get to, the planning of it is just amazing. It's very different than planning a short film. So yeah, it was really nice to work on a bigger project, really get your teeth into something. And for that, I did both the sound recording on set, and I did the editing, or was part of the editing team, because it was quite a big project.
How did working on these kind of recurring projects or these longer, bigger scale things help to kind of transition you into more of a like professional in the industry?
You don't get that stability. You're sort of professional for just a weekend or something, and then you're back to, you know, trying to find other work. But this was a regular recurring job, and so you had to really plan it. You had to really be there basically, because otherwise they didn't have any sound if I wasn't going to show up. Going from, you know, studying to a 9 to 5 job, you then realize how to be a professional, how to actually be responsible. You are responsible for getting things done, for being there on time, you know. And because it is such a big project, it needs to work on schedule. It needs to be as tied to the schedule as possible, because, you know, film projects always run over and run out of budget, but as tied to it as possible. Because locations were like, we were filming in a bookstore and we only had a certain amount of time before the bookstore actually opened. I think that really helps with you know, thinking of yourself as a filmmaking professional.
Talk to me about kind of the journey also of your kind of accruing stuff. You know, did you start off with a certain rig and then change it? You know, what did you learn on set that like, oh, I need stuff I don't have, or I can do, you know, I'm going to MacGyver like what I have, I'll figure out how to make it work. Or, you know, were you constantly upgrading? How were you affording all of your stuff, especially as an indie person where you are like gig to gig? How were you able to set yourself up so you did have like either a home studio or at least everything you needed to be on set?
I think it's funny because when people do like the pre-production for films, they think about everything. They think about the lenses that they want for the kind of shots they want, the camera that they want to use, but nobody, or not a lot of people at least, think about what kind of microphone they want or need to capture the sound. So as a sound person, if someone asks you, can you come, and you have your own stuff, that's like a real benefit, because they don't have to think about it. The producers or the director don't have to think about it. They just know this person is coming to do sound and they've got their equipment, so it's sorted basically. So it takes a lot of the planning away from them. And so when I realized that, because, you know, you go on set and then you have like a rattling boom pole because no one actually checked the, you know, the specs for it properly, or, you know, or whether it was old or something. So I decided, you know, I'm just gonna get my own stuff, so I know it's right and it works, and I can check the batteries and I can make sure that I've got, you know, enough cable and all that kind of stuff, so that I was completely self-sufficient and not dependent on anyone, which was both for my benefit, so that I was, you know, because obviously it was my responsibility to capture sound, and without sound it was just a silent film. So because it was my responsibility, I wanted to just to have that control over my own equipment and my own stuff. So that was beneficial for me, but also beneficial for the crew, because they knew like, oh, the sound person is sorted basically.
And did you find, you know, project to project that you needed to upgrade or add to your kind of like inventory, or is it pretty much like, I just got a good recording device, a good boom pole, and a good mic, and then I was good to go?
I think, yeah, I had a good recorder, a good boom pole, a good microphone. I think it was fine for all the projects that I had to do. Yeah.
So after you had your Australia adventure, you ended up moving to England, and you actually kind of switched from doing on-set sound recording to working in a studio and doing more like post sound. Tell me about not only the move from Australia to England, but also the move from being like on set to post.
I was always interested in post sound. I remember in film school there was like one audio suite. There was one like small room with the mixer in there, and I was like, I think one of the only people who went in there and actually played around with the mixer or with the desk. So I was always interested in post sound, but it is a hard industry to get into. So that's why I did sound recording on set. I moved from Australia to England because, well, you know, at some point your visa ends and you have to move somewhere else. And I didn't want to immediately go back to Holland, so I decided to move to London. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to have this massive like change in my life, and now I'm going to just try and get a more steady job in a studio, while because it's all nice to freelance and stuff, but at some I wanted to have a more steady job. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and find a job in a studio. So I literally went around Soho in London, where a lot of the studios are, just handing in my resume. And I was looking both at video post-production and audio. I preferred audio, but obviously when you start out, you have to start somewhere. And that's how I got to the place that I started working in London.
It sounds like that you moved to England and then kind of settled into post and weren't really looking to get on set much anymore. So how did settling into working for that company and what you learned there, it's kind of like go back to what you said about film school. You went in with the idea of directing, you came out with the idea of audio. So you went into England, were looking for a post job, and then that kind of made you realize like, yes, this is exactly where I want to be.
Although like I really enjoyed being on set, I always did enjoy post-production more, and especially the audio side of it. So when I started working in the studio, I learned a lot about sound design and a lot about like sound audio recording, and I was really like, yeah, this is I really do want to do post-production. So I was very, very happy to be there and to learn.
Now you have moved again.
Yeah.
And you've also both like physically where you're living, but also you moved again in the industry. So you still have your kind of a, quote, day job, industry job. But as you mentioned at the beginning, you opened your own company. So talk to me about your geographical move and like why that happened and where you are now, but also about the move to go from like, well, I have a job and I'm doing the thing I like, to I'm actually opening my own business.
Yeah, so I moved back all the way back around the world and back to my home city, The Hague in Holland. And I started my own company. So I still work for the company in London, and I still do bits and pieces for them. But I started my own company because I like the freedom of being able to work on projects that I want to work on, and to work with people that I want to work. And it's a challenge. I always like to challenge myself, so I thought, why not? But if you open your own company, and especially, it sounds like a big thing if you open my own company, but it's just me. And so if I just say I am just audio, like not a lot of people are gonna go, yeah, okay, that's great. So I started to expand my skills again back into also video editing, and I'm even sort of learning effects now as well, and After Effects, because I think if you are your own person and if you are your own freelancer, the more skills you have and the more skills you can offer, the more work you can find and the more value you can offer a film production.
What perspective shifts or like new things have you seen now that you didn't before you left Holland?
I think before I left Holland, I was very much, you work in the film industry and you work on movies and series and stuff. But I think the film industry is such a broad term when you think about it. It's anyone who creates event videos or business videos. They can all be called the film industry. So there's a lot more potential work if you think about it like that. Because if you're just stuck on I only want to do fiction, that's great, but then you have to go, I think, maybe to LA to really work there, and if you want to do that kind of stuff. But I think it's such a broad term, and I think it's, especially if you are a freelancer, even you can't just be doing one job anymore. You need to now do filming, for example, and editing, and sound and effects, and it's just because everyone nowadays has a camera on their phone and everyone has an editing program. So you need to set yourself apart, which when I went to film school, no one was really editing and camera phones were not really a thing yet. I think it's both a lot harder to get into the industry, but also a lot easier to set yourself apart from others.
All of us, when we start out, we're the young people on the set, and the older people have more experience. They're in charge. But that's a little easier for me as like a white guy from America, when the majority of people I'm working with are like white guys from America. So for you as an international woman, especially in sound, What's your experience been, and was that different in the different countries you worked in?
Well, especially when I was doing sound recording on set in Sydney, a lot of times I walked on set with my stuff, and either they thought that I was just carrying it in for someone else, or immediately some guy came up to me and said, "I can get you a C stand for your boom." And I was like looking at him like, "Yeah, but they're walking. Do you want me to move the C stand every time?" Like, so they didn't think that I could hold up the boom for the whole scene or whatever. And we were always so impressed when I could. And then they gave me these, like, they were nice compliments, but they were also like, "Yeah, but I was hired to do the sound. Like, you should expect me to do the sound. You shouldn't come running up trying to help me set up my gear, or, you know, offering me stands to hold up my boom." As a woman in a male dominated industry, it's a lot harder for me to, like, a lot of times I will be in meetings or I will meet someone and I really have to prove that I know what I'm talking about. So even though I don't want to, I still would have to name drop terms just so to establish that I know what I'm talking about, because it's not immediately a given for the other person. It's a little bit of a harder, like, longer run for, I think, for women in the industry.
And would you say that that is also true of being a member of the lesbian community in the film world? Is there any difference or issues there that you found, or is that something that doesn't come up or doesn't really matter?
I don't think that matters that much. You know, you are in an art industry, and so a lot of people are more open-minded and stuff. So I've never really had an issue about being gay in the industry.
Where are you in terms of doing your own projects or going into some of those other things like writing and directing, or new skills like VFX? Like, what would you say is going to be kind of the future of both you and your company as far as being creative or an artist?
At the moment, I am focusing on mainly on post-production. I do like writing, and I always loved it during film school as well. I loved writing. It is always something that I still want to pick up because I've got so many ideas and they're all written down in a little notebook somewhere, and I still want to, like, develop them and write them out. But I think for now, because also I'm not, you know, I've just started my own company by a year now. So I just want to get comfortable with post-production and get more of a network as well, because the downside about moving around so much is that you lose your network. I had a big network in Sydney. I had a network in London a little bit, and now here in Holland, I am trying to build it up again. So I'm trying to get meetings with studios to get to know people and just really position myself as a post-production person. So video, sound, and effects.
What tips or kind of ideas would you like to kind of give to anyone to know so that they could benefit from your knowledge?
Definitely, my main tip would be, like, think about sound in pre-production and while you're filming, because I've had so many times where I've been on set and no one actually thought about sound. And so either the room was too small to record sound in properly, or the room was too echoey, and there's not much then I can do, either on set or in post-production. Also, a lot of times where I would tell someone, or, you know, usually the first AD, to say that there was a plane overhead or there was a car in the background. I didn't catch that sentence. And the director would just ignore it and just be like, "Oh, I'll be fine." Because the shot was nice and the actors were good. But if you can't hear the sound, then, you know, they're going to have a problem in post-production. And also, having worked or working in the post sound industry, if you can only clean up sound so much, and especially if you don't have a massive budget as indie filmmakers, yeah, there's only so much you can do with sound in post production if you don't record it properly on set. So really, my main tip would just be, like, think about it all the time. Like, you think about your lenses and your shot compositions and your lighting. Think about sound as well.
I'd love to give you the opportunity to have other people join your team. So how would they either reach out to you or your company and or see more of your work?
I think the easiest way is to go to my website, decresso.nl, and you'll also find my social media links there, and my work.
Well, thanks so much for talking with us. I really appreciate learning some more things about you that I didn't know, and I've known you for a long time. So I wish you all the best, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.